Hello and welcome. This is Dion Hinchcliffe. I'm VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. We are a boutique analyst firm based out of Silicon Valley. We work for vendors and large enterprises around the world on things like digital strategy, digital transformation. I cover our new C-suite and future of work coverage areas. And I recently conducted a CIO survey to really take the pulse of what's going to be happening in 2021 in the largest organizations in the world. And my good friend Vinnie Mirchandani invited me to come and present this, and so here we are. So thanks, Vinnie, for having me come and present what we found out.
It's always a pleasure, Dan. I'm looking forward to this. You have some of the most impressive graphics, infographics in the analyst world. So I'm looking forward to this. If nothing else, just the pretty graphics.
Well, we don't have too many of those because this is more of a database survey. So, but I'm happy to, as we after we go through the data, to bring up some of the other interesting things that I'm seeing that's related to this. And so we did this in Q4 2020. I picked who I thought the top 100 CIOs, and I relentlessly hounded them until they responded. I had to go past that number, obviously, to get a full response. And so what we wanted to do, Vinnie, was everyone's trying to figure out, read the tea leaves. What does 2021 have in store for us? How are top CIOs thinking about the problems they're facing? Where are they moving their budget? What are they emphasizing? What challenges are they facing? What obstacles do they think that they have, right? So we want to understand all of that, and we're about to present the data of what we saw. So, and some of it was not that surprising, which was good. It's nice to know some things never change. And we also saw some significant changes. So one we wanted to know is, all right, so what happened to CIO budgets? Again, these are all large enterprises, mostly Fortune 500, a few Global 2000. So, it represents Europe a little bit, Asia a little bit, but mostly North America. And it was interesting because it shows how much technology has really been seen as a tool to help us mitigate the consequences of the pandemic and all the other things that have happened in 2020, right? Over half said, hey, we're lucky. Our budget and staff are about the same, right? Which is great. And we saw this in other surveys that said that in things like digital transformation, 70% of companies have kept the same budget or increased it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we did see a good number of companies, about 25%, saw significant reductions across the board, more than 10%, and about 15% saw about a 10% reduction. So not too bad. And I often, in my surveys, Vinnie, I often ask the question, I have the other slot to see, did I miss something in my questions? And did people write a lot of things in? And a couple people actually said the budgets went up. Right, that's what that other is mostly is.
And I presume the ones that went down are in certain sectors like travel and
yes,
where the economy has really hurt them.
Yeah, hospitality, retail, restaurants, those sorts of things, right? So, and we didn't have enough fine-grained data with 100 CIOs to really get too much into industry, but we'll share what we do have. So that was good. Getting into the interesting things is, I asked, what are the top 5 IT budget priorities for 2021, right? And they could select 5. And I had an other, which was no one filled in other. So this is pretty representative. And there's a lot of options here. We had to cover a lot of bases. And you can see, across the board, but digital transformation was the clearest signal. And that's digital transformation of work, because our workers have all moved. 48 million Americans alone have shifted their primary place of work, and that we had to transform work, and we're still in the process of that. We did that hastily, and the data shows it's not very good, but we did it, but we still have to do more of it. And then our customers have moved, and their behaviors have changed, and expectations have changed, and we'll see that in the data later. And so digital transformation of work and customer experience, head and shoulders, even above cybersecurity, which usually, that's the real number one priority, is making sure, things like ransomware don't take the whole company down.
Okay. So this is did you, one of the things, I've been interviewing a number of CIOs myself, and you hear that on-premise systems were a pain as people move to work from home.
Yes.
VPN provisioning issues, scaling issues, and so on. That didn't come up as a priority, moving applications more to a hyperscaler or a SaaS. That's not yet showing up as a priority.
Well, it's interesting, because you look here at cloud, is only 36% reported that as a top 5 priority, right? It's on this list, and you're absolutely right. I've talked to probably close to 200 CIOs since this all began, and they said all the ones that had made significant investments in cloud reported much easier migration of work. The on-prem folks said we had real scalability challenges, real stress tests for weeks that went on for weeks, but they did address that. But I had other things out here like IT modernization, right? It's another third, right? Remote work infrastructure right below that, another 22%. So I think if you stack these, a lot of those can be put into that bucket, right? So it actually is, if you combine cloud, IT modernization, or remote work infrastructure together, that's actually collectively a pretty big budget priority, right?
Yep.
And then I have return to work, which is another thing. I'm just now starting to really get into those discussions with our CIO clients.
That's turning out to be. I had a CIO who said, lockdown was difficult. Reopening is even more complex because the guidance from different authorities is so contradictory, and the protocols are just way more complex. So yeah,
I'm on my big return to work plan for blueprint for companies, and I'm on page 14, and I barely started. Right, so that's the challenge. One CIO gave me a great quote. Said, remote work was a walk in the park compared to return to work. Right, so.
I think your CIO was a little more eloquent than mine, but
So anyway, it's interesting. And we see things like customer privacy and safety. I was a little discouraged to see that so low, near the very, very bottom, along with regulatory. And both of those are really actually big issues in the real world, right? But we're not seeing this even in top CIOs saying don't make top 5 for sure. So,
Dion, that may be a little example of where they're not being totally open. I've heard from several people on the quiet. They're really worried about outsourcing data and privacy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, Vinnie, when I talk to vendors now, I say, what's the biggest thing you're seeing? And for companies that have a lot of overseas customers, they're saying data sovereignty. It features that say that they can click on the settings that say, don't let any of my data leave the country. That's a big thing, right? So
even more now that even the outsourcers have moved to work from home in several countries, there just isn't any privacy at home, right? I mean, the big families, neighbors,
right.
And so that's. I don't think it's coming out yet overtly, but that is a subtle issue I've heard.
That's a great point, Vinnie. And the reality of remote work is, a lot of people, I was talking to the CIO of Lowe's, and he said that they've had this huge boom of people building new home offices and new extensions of their home so they can work. But that's not most of the world. Most of the world can't do that, right? They're not in a position to do that. And you see, if you see that the top end of the market really needs to do that, what's everyone else going to do, right? So yeah, all these issues. So one of the things I wanted to focus on is I went over this assumption that everybody was going to have some kind of reductions. Everyone was going to ask to help out. The CFO is going to go around saying, guys, we can't continue to invest. I was really gratified. The numbers were higher than I thought about the cuts, but still, I felt that CIOs really were going to want to get more from what they already had. And we had another very clear signal: more automation, including artificial intelligence, workflow, robotic process automation. I was head and shoulders above everything else, right? We need to automate more. And we've been doing it. It's not like it hasn't been happening, but it hasn't been like this incredible urgency as we see here. I've never seen that kind of that clear signal. Usually it's things like we have lots of data that we don't understand. We're not doing analytics well. All right, we need to democratize. Those are the kinds of things I've been seeing for years. Now this is we got to do more with less, right?
Well, not funnily, but Dion, in the warehouse sector, I had a vendor tell me they had an HR group basically nixed their proposal because they said, "Oh, you're going to replace our labor," right? 3 months later, they got a call back saying, I think you can help us distance our employees. Come on back in, right? So that was one automation use case that we couldn't have thought about 6 months ago. On the shop floor, I'm seeing a lot of cobots as people think about bringing manufacturing back. That's the only way they're going to be able to get our labor to be as efficient as cheaper offshore labor. So there's other automation drivers that are starting to kick in.
Yes, I agree with that. And I've with talking with one CIO of a very large consumer packaged goods, they're only at about 25% efficiency of where they were pre-COVID, because the machines are too close together. They have to leave them idle, and they're trying to understand, like, if we, by the time they got them reconfigured, if a vaccine is out, then they would have wasted all that effort too. So that there's a timing aspect to it. They can get a lot more floor space and reconfigure for COVID, but by that time we might have a vaccine. So there's a lot of hedging bets right now, trying to figure out which direction, which path do I take, you know? So the next one, no surprise, portfolio assessment and rationalizing what you have in IT to reduce and combine assets. No surprise there. Almost all of them are doing that, right? You know, almost 2/3. But then the signal really dies down. I mean, we're really seeing automation as being viewed as this panacea for, you know, being able to do more no matter what happens. Whether staff cuts in the business or IT cuts, under the CIO, they're looking at automation, because it goes way down to under 1/3 of the next answer, which is, let's get more out of the high leverage features and capabilities of our already owned IT assets. It's no big surprise, Vinnie, you probably speak volumes about it, that most companies don't nearly take advantage of the platforms that they have. Features and capabilities are being added by vendors faster than customers can absorb them. So they can actually get a lot more things done than they've been focusing on. But I expected this to be higher, but we're already dropping down to the thirds here, right? So, we see cross-training and employing solutions that maximize adoption, like digital adoption platforms is a huge new category right now, but the signal's not strong in any of those, right? So it's interesting.
It's funny you mentioned underutilized assets, right? So I just got an iPhone 12 Pro, and I download the user guide, 1,300 pages. So my wife asks me every few days, well, how many pages are you up to? And I go, it's going to take me years.
The most amazing feature of is the LiDAR sensor. Get a LiDAR capture app. It's amazing if you haven't already.
Yeah, I'm going to go at my own pace. That'll probably be year 4.5.
It captures a millimeter accurate 3D space of any type. It's truly stunning, right? And then you can manipulate it and rotate it, and it's incredible.
I'll let you teach me that.
Excellent. And so then we want to understand, remote work, because we don't really know how long we're going to be working remotely. It's going to take, even in America, delivering 200 to 300 million vaccines is going to take a couple of years, is what a lot of people think, right? So, and the liability is too high. I mean, for certain companies, they simply can't allow people to come back to work, and if there's any deaths at all, that's too many, right? There's the liability alone is, unless some Congress comes up with something, remote work is going to be in effect for a while. So I want to understand that better. And what was interesting is that we had the CIOs, by and large, said, hey, we're really challenged by this. That was the number one signal. The top challenge is IT. Our support is challenged by what our workers need to be productive at home or remote offices or whatever. But it wasn't a super clear signal. It wasn't over half, right? But it was very interesting. And we see that the skills of remote workers are also not sufficient. That at least the CIO believes workers could do more, IT could do more. And really not surprising when you think about it, but this is confirmation, right? So, and we see, some workers want more than IT is able to offer, right? But the signals kind of died down after that. So not a surprise there. I've seen this over and over again. I've written a couple of reports about remote work, and the wait times are way up. The challenges, because the variability at customers' homes is so high. Working through the issues is taking a long time. It can take weeks. Some employees are reporting taking weeks to work through certain issues. That's just too long. So big challenges.
And on the vaccine issue, I think the safest assumption is not to assume it won't be there, right? I mean, the Pfizer vaccine is going to need to be transported and stored at -70, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. I heard it was cold, but I didn't know it was that cold.
Yeah, around the world, maybe in the US, we're a bit more prepared for it. But, and, Zebra, I heard the CEO mention that they have a color coding that can say when something, it hasn't been frozen at that temperature. But as you can imagine, not every vial is going to be.
Yeah, effective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, and then we're going to see so much variability too. These are only like 90% effective. So we're going to get there. I mean, it looks like now the world has really stepped up and produced vaccines faster than ever before. And I'm hoping that human trials go well. But yeah, all of this we're seeing here is going to be dramatically impacted by how fast the world is safe for us to travel and work together again. So it's interesting. So then I said, all right, well, that was the technology, but what are you seeing as an IT leader? What are you seeing on the human dimension? Let's talk about the people, because if technology serves people, that's the most important thing, right? And so, I think it's important not to ignore that. And we saw, again, a super clear signal in the answers here. We're seeing, mental, psychological, and physical well-being challenges much larger than a usual number of workers, which is no surprise. I've heard so many things. I kind of asked, I say, give me a vignette of what you're hearing on the ground. And that middle managers are turning into, personal coaches, family mediators, trying to help their workers who are, their kids can't go to school. They can't go to daycare. They're trying to be productive and they're trying to problem solve all of that. I even talked to, for a very large energy company, both their CIO and their CHRO, and they said they actually have a proactive program that monitors every worker's communication to see if they're exhibiting signs of stress, and then they actually intervene to say, "We think you need help. Can we help you?" Right, across the whole spectrum of mental, psychological, and physical issues.
One of the more depressing interviews I did was with a lady who's been all about women equality in a nice way. She's in the corporate world. She said BCG had done a study which said women are reporting 15 hours of work, free, unpaid work, to kids, doing stuff at home than before. And she said, as a result, many women are thinking of leaving the workforce, which is exactly what we don't need at this point. So yeah, I mean, all these are complicating issues.
And I've heard that the data from multiple sources as well is that it's untenable, the situations that many female workers have been put into, and something has to be done. So, and so we see a couple other key signals here. CIOs say that some workers are disappearing into the silos of their home because you don't have that visibility. You're not walking around. You don't have the water cooler conversations. There's just less visibility and less collaboration because of people siloed in their homes. That was the number 2 signal. And then also we see managers. I put something in there. I noticed that others very low here. This seems to capture the spectrum of issues, right? But difficulty with managers learning to manage remotely. We don't train executives and we don't train managers on how to lead their organizations through a Wi-Fi connection. But that's it. I mean, that's all we have now is our digital employee experience. And now you've got to do all the things you used to do. You have to do it a completely different way. And we see that was a pretty significant signal as well. And so then I wanted to ask, I said, what do you think is going to dramatically improve IT effectiveness and or return on investment right now in your organization? Pick 5, right? And I'm gratified, again, the others very low here. So on a few of them, we had others that were high, others very low here. And we see this is the automation, the next most easily automated IT function, or line worker tasks. That was a clear signal. More self-service IT. And that's very good for IT service management companies that are offering chat bots that actually work, actually will solve your problem or procure your software or fix your issue, whatever. And I've talked to a lot of organizations who sell those solutions who've seen their sales just skyrocket because now there's so much variability in the IT workforce. They'll have bring your own devices, bring your own network connection. They have to share all this with their family, all their, or most of their IT resources. So we see here a real desire from the CIO to say IT should be more self-service, right? And new systems and applications. This is great for the vendors. Almost half said, I need new systems and applications that are better designed to augment how we operate today versus how we used to operate. So a lot of interesting things here. Collaboration tools, another one, more suited to remote work.
One of the complaints I've heard is some companies are doing a lot more surveillance of their employees. Did that come up?
A lot more surveys? Is that what you said?
No, surveillance.
Yeah. So yeah, I've always viewed that companies that have to monitor their workers that way have a poor hiring and poor management capabilities, where they feel like they have to put that safety net that they don't trust it. We're hiring workers they don't trust, essentially, right? So I because that tends to be indicative. I've done a lot of other surveys and research that tends to be indicative of lower performing organizations that have to do that. We see this in certain industries like airlines and cable companies where the workers just aren't that engaged to begin with, right? Where they have to do that. In high performing organizations, they don't. I permanently went after leading CIOs from top organizations. So I want to see what the best were doing, right? So I didn't ask that question just because I didn't think it was going to come up much.
I think, Dion, you're being very modest. You could have said Constellation clients don't have that issue. We are best in class.
There you go. Thank you. Well said, Vinnie. So then I wanted to talk about the CIO, what they think. There's a lot of discussion about how the CIOs entered the boardroom, that they're helping the organization bail water with all the troubles in a way that they never have before. They have visibility because technology has been used to solve some of these issues, to rethink how they serve customers, delivering things at home instead and doing more remote and online delivery of what they used to do in person. Same thing with the workers. So I expected the CIO to view themselves as having a greater role. And by the way, they really did. Look at this data. They think they're going to have more influence in so many areas, right? With almost half said customers. That's the green bar right there. Many of them said finance. They're going to have more impact in finance. But where it was around innovation, around the worker, around operations, and recovery. I put technology in there as a cross check, and of course it came back high. It should have. So the CIO their role has really, for the most part, shined in most organizations, and they've received greatly increased visibility. And so this shows here. I don't know about your conversations.
I would say, if you look at the C-level suite, I've been stunned at how much more visibility HR has gotten through the crisis. Yeah, and it's understandable, right? But, as I like to say, they're still not strategic, but they've definitely become essential. And I would say the CIO similarly has had visibility go up dramatically.
And I've seen the CHRO and CIO coming together. In a lot of my conversations, they're now working closer than they ever have in the past. They're kind of like riding shotgun with each other. And I think that's really important because you really can't change the technology without changing the people, and vice versa. There has to be something you do together, and it's not something you do to people, you do with it. And you need to have those two leaders that can drive changes on both sides to really drive transformation. So that's interesting. Then, and this goes into my expertise. So I spend a lot of time focusing on how employees navigate technology. And what I was curious is, we saw a desire here to throw new systems and new technologies at workers that are better designed, or better collaboration tools designed for remote work. But the problem is that workers can't have a limited ability to absorb these. In fact, in a crisis, most workers tend to fall back to what they know, like things like email, which is terrible, right? A terrible way of communicating. It's 35-year-old technology that has barely improved, right? With time, we have much better tools. So I said, well, what do you expect if you roll out new things that are going to help with this? That what are your adoption expectations, right? And almost 2/3 said we expect them to be used, right? And I think that's not, to me, that's a little naive. That's We'd like that. The CIOs that came back and said, however, we'd use specific guidance in our training to direct employees which tool to use when, right? And we still have, this is the only time I talked about surveillance, that green bar there. We primarily measure logins for each tool to ensure adequate adoption. And 20% said that. So, it's interesting. And then I wanted to come back and say, all right, so how satisfied have you been recently on your ROI in general anyway? Were you already having challenges or not? And you always have to be careful. This was an anonymous survey. I could not tell who answered the questions. I told them this. I said, I don't know who's answering this, so you can answer honestly. I don't, and you never know how truthful the data is. But almost a third said, hey, we're very satisfied. Just under 2/3 said mostly satisfied, and about 10% said, nah, we're having more challenges than we'd like. And I have, when I see the same data from IT workers, I usually see a very different set. Right, there's usually much less satisfaction, right? So you have to be careful with this. But anyway, just shows room for improvement. In fact, in most organizations. Next question I wanted to say is, all right, we know that some organizations are just running on vapor, right? They've already exhausted their loans from the government. They've already done all their cuts. They're waiting for the market to come back, right? And they're just trying to hang on till that happens. So and that's a lot more organizations that want are doing that would care to admit. And you don't want to lose talent, right? Smart organizations don't cut talent too quickly because they go to your competition, right? And you can't hire them back quickly. Good hires are strategic and take time, right? So you want to hang on with as much as you can, and we did see a very clear signal that they're expecting like a 10% boost in productivity or ROI across the board within 6 months, right? So that's interesting. And we got a fair amount of others. Some said nothing major is going to change. This is the one where we said that where you can tell there's other answers that would have been good here. And some of them said, no, there's no, we need it to be faster, or we need it to be bigger than what you have on the survey here. So it was interesting. But most are expecting a big boost within 6 months, or it may not matter. And then I wanted to, and we're getting near the end here. I think it was 13 questions all in. I said, what else is driving big changes in your IT organization? And we see a variety of things, but what really stood out is this major changes in customer expectations and behavior. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone's either under lockdown, or their lives have been dramatically affected by others who are complying with the social distancing, and so they want to be served differently. They want, instead of going to the restaurant, they want the restaurant to serve their meals, right? Instead of going to the mall, they want that stuff delivered. They want personal shoppers. They want all sorts of things. And so that's driven CIOs to have to make major changes. I was talking to a CIO of a mortgage company, leading mortgage company, and they didn't have digital signatures, right? So they still had to FedEx packages to your door because they were old and traditional. They hadn't changed yet. But as soon as the lockdown happened, no one wanted to go in to the real estate office, and no one wanted to wait for the packages. So they started losing market share rapidly. And so they struggled to roll out digital signatures, and they went to low code, and they said, let's roll out using our low code capabilities, because they estimated it would take almost 6 months for them to do it the old way, but they could do it in 2 months and maybe save the business if they did it the fast way. And that's what they did. So we're seeing those kinds of, having to do major surgery on the way that you, at the core of your business, very, very quickly to survive, right? So
the mortgage business has turned digital very, very rapidly. I mean, earlier on, you used to I heard of one that used to send who's the guy who witnesses the signatures? The
notary.
They would send them to the person's garage, right? And signer, the mortgage owner, would sign in one car, and this guy would witness the signature from the garage next to him and certify that he saw it. I mean, all kinds of somersaults to be able to meet the legal requirement.
Yeah, right. But this, I mean, and this is, and these are the changes the CIOs have to bravely lead quickly. And a couple other really important data points in this chart, Vinnie, along those lines. One is CIOs saying that they don't have the staff with the skills that they need today, now, right? That came out loud and clear. That's the green bar. And then if you look at the red bar and the purple bar in the middle there, we're seeing a lot of them are experiencing a reorganization, a restructuring of IT, or a reorganization and restructuring of the business. So doing all of this, right, automating very quickly, digitally transforming very quickly, changing the way your staff works, changing the way that you support your customers, and undergoing a major reorganization and restructuring of IT and or the business. That's I don't relish the daily tasks these CIOs must have, right?
I mean, you got your hats off to be able to manage all this. It's pretty impressive. Yeah,
exactly. And then you have major changes in customer expectations. So that's and we're seeing automation, digital transformation as the two lead signals here. And then to round this out, I said, all right, so what's going to help you ride future disruptions? What's going to future-proof your business? What do you think in IT is going to do that, right? And what's interesting is it's not self-serving, but it shows that they've got to show that they're on the right path. And so near-term demonstrable success with digital transformation was the clearest signal. Just over half, right, said that I got to prove that we can handle these major, digital transformation is an imperative now. We got to fix the workplace, and we got to fix how we serve our customers, because both of those places have changed dramatically in 2020. And now they got to prove the future-proof the business, saying we can handle these changes. I want to prove that we can handle these transformation imperatives, right? We see automation. I want to prove that I can automate high-value growth areas of the business. I want to make IT more resilient and adaptive, and that's cloud is a big piece of that, but that's not nearly sufficient, right? So very few disaster recovery plans had pandemic in them, is what I heard. I asked for a while, and then I realized one company said, yeah, we had a pandemic in our crisis plans, right? So we're going to see all of that, people looking for other disruptions much more carefully now. And in creating a internal talent stream of just-in-time capabilities. I just put that as an outlier. By the way, look, other is small here, so this pretty much captures it. Oh, Vinnie, there's your surveillance data on the left. That actually is in there. Look at that. Monitoring employee productivity. Almost nobody, which is what I would expect from high-performing organizations.
Yep.
So, but
on the digital transformation, one thing I've noticed is how industry specific it's become, right? So,
yes,
what I call vertical edge applications, so telemedicine and healthcare. PPP loan processing and banking suddenly became important as 5 million SBA loans had to be processed. All the last mile delivery, all the e-commerce, all the warehouse fulfillment, automated warehouse. A lot of those have gotten accelerated. Did you collect any of that data?
I did not. Pretty much here is what I've collected. Okay. So we did have a pretty broad coverage in industries. So you can see education, finance, government, healthcare, legal, manufacturing, but a fair amount of write-ins too. So it's interesting. So from that perspective, I definitely see digital transformation has now begun really business specific. In a way it wasn't before. It used to be like, well, now we had to get our data story correct so that we have a good, strong data foundation. We have to move to the cloud and be able to deliver there. But now I definitely see people applying AI to very specific parts of their business, IoT to very specific parts of their business, and trying to get more by focusing on how they get work done. And I always see this big now convergence of IT and OT, so information technology and operational technology has to converge more for those transformations to happen, and that's kind of interesting. Those worlds don't often mix very well, so this is why they were separate to begin with.
Well, and we've been talking digital transformation for a decade. Maybe this is a kick in the behind it needed. Might make it much more business relevant, right?
Well, I mean, I think what I think the data here shows is that digital transformation became an imperative in the workplace and the customer experience this year. And those are the two of the biggest places that organizations have. And that they feel like they have to report significant results, improvements to that in the next 6 months. So digital transformation can't be kicked down the can. Most, we said over two thirds of the respondents here said that's their top budget priority. So it's interesting.
They go your 5-year ERP projects.
Yeah. Well, yes, exactly. Well, and that, I mean, we're seeing cloud ERP finally cutting into that, right? You know, I still see so many organizations that have 2, 3, 4, 5. I just talked to one that had seven ERP systems from different, because it either very different lines of business or did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And they don't want to upgrade because the cost of upgrading is so expensive. But once you go cloud ERP, you know, it's much easier to stay current. So we'll see. So anyway, that was the CIO survey 2020. I think, you know, it helps other CIOs look at where they should be investing, which is, we probably should be looking very closely at things like automation.
Dion, is there a longer report? Can I put a link where they can ask for more, or?
Yeah. So a company in digital adoption has licensed a reprint for this, has made this available to the public as a full report. And I will
send me a link to that.
I will.
People can follow up with you.
Yep. And it has. We analyzed each one of these points in the data we got back. So great. Well, thanks, Vinnie. I appreciate you having me stop by and present all this. I think it's a really important highway markers on the journey that we're all on, and what we have to do next. 2021 is going to be an interesting year, a better year, I think, than 2020.
Well, I certainly hope so. It hasn't been that. You know, a lot of people complain that 2020 was horrible. We have seen amazing acrobatics. We have seen some amazing heroics, you know.
Yes.
And so I'm very grateful to a lot of people. It has brought out the best, and unfortunately the worst in all of us. So hope.
Well, I'd actually agree with you, and I do think there's been a lot of people not like us that have been impacted. You know, who've lost their jobs and lost their houses. I mean, I do think there's a lot of human pain and suffering that's happened in 2020 that you and I are lucky to be isolated from. But I think it's gonna come back, and it has been coming back. Every company. One question I have been asking to everyone is, how is productivity? And everyone's reporting that productivity is up for those heroic interventions that you were just talking about. Some amazing things. So yeah, I'm hopeful.